Hello, my name's Ian Green. I'm the executive chef of the Hythe Imperial Hotel. Today I'm going to show you how to cook a pan-seared scallop dish with leeks, sautéed potatoes and chorizo with a lemon oil dressing. First of all, scallops. Looking for 3 medium-sized scallops or 2 large, depending on where you get your scallops from. If you can get them in the shell, they will end up coming like this. You can buy the meat from the fish counter, or if you're going to go to a fishmonger, ask them to take the initial shell off so you're just left with the meat inside. To take the scallops out of the shell, you have a small mussel here which will need to be removed afterwards. You take that away from you, and with a palette knife or a non-sharp knife at home, like a table knife you may have, gently lift underneath the scallop and push towards the mussel. And what that will do is that will just release the mussel from the shell without splitting it. Because what you don't want to do is rip the mussel. So same thing again, the mussel's there. You push it away from the shell and underneath, and you'll end up with 3 scallops that are out of the shell. Now, some fishmongers will do that for you, and like I say, you can buy scallop meat. Once they're out of the shell, it's up to you. You can eat the roe, some people choose not to. If you don't want to eat the roe, where the mussel joins the meat, simply pop your finger, your nail through and pull away, and then very gently you should just pull away from the actual scallop, be very careful not to pull the actual scallop meat. So that's it removed there. And then for the roe, again being careful, just gently pull it away, and you'll be left with a scallop like this. If you have them in the shell, it's always worth just to give them a quick rinse in water. Don't leave them under running water, because they will act like a sponge and they'll suck up all the water and you'll lose the flavour and the sweetness of the scallop. So I'll pop these last 2 off with the mussel. If you do need to wash these, I would suggest you wash them before you do anything else, because it's always good to give them a chance to dry off. These are on a clean kitchen towel, but you could use a J cloth or something like that at home. So they're clean, and what we'll do is we'll just dab them on top, we'll get them dry and leave them there while we prepare everything else. Just move these to the side. Next stage will be the cooking chorizo. Now it's important to get cooking chorizo and not chorizo that's already cooked, because the oils that come out, you need to actually cook this down and render it. So most good supermarkets will do these in small little baby size. You may get them slightly longer, maybe twice the size of this. Some will require to remove the skin before cooking, but most of them don't nowadays. So sharp knife, just cut into around about a centimetre rondelle kind of size. Like a one pound coin basically, or an old style £1 coin should I say. And then what you want to do with those, in a medium heat pan on the stove, is just drop those straight in. You don't need to add oil as long as the pan isn't too hot, because you don't want to fry them, you just want to cook them down. By placing them in a pan, you want to end up with something like this. So there's no oil in there. These oils that are in the back of the pan here and running down, they're the natural oils from the chorizo. So it's full of the flavour of that and not cooking oil. So we want to use that later on. Okay, sautéed potatoes are next. Simply take your new potato, most people don't know how to do this anyway. Take your new potato, wash it, cook it until it's firm, because remember you're going to cook this again in the pan. And you're going to slice it until you end up with slices around this kind of size. Now, anything too thin will break up when you go to fry it, but literally you're just going to take the ends off and then cut just short of a centimetre, and that's going to give you nice discs which will enable you to cook them through and get a nice colour on them without them breaking up. So we'll cook those shortly. At the same time, we're going to look to cook the leek. So depending on how big your leek is going to be, if you want to retain that for something later on, stock or something, please do. If not, you can get rid of that. And then take the tail end off. So we're going to try and cut these into half moons. So again, if it's quite a long leek and you feel more manageable cutting it in half first, then probably do that. Whatever you feel comfortable with. So into half moon shapes, and then we're just going to chop them down. And as you can see from this leek here, there's quite a lot of dirt underneath the layers. So we need to give them a good wash and a good dry off. But you're cutting them into this kind of half moon shape, so they'll fall apart and they'll cook quite nicely. These are going to be cooked in a medium heat pan. So heat your pan, touch of oil, add your washed leeks. Just make sure the leeks are dry. If they've still got water in them, obviously the water and the oil is not going to mix very well, particularly hot oil, it will splash up. And you're going to cook them for about a minute or two until you kind of get to this consistency here. So these have been sitting off the stove slightly for a minute, but they're soft to the touch, but they're not overcooked. I think depending on how you like your vegetables, this is how it needs to be done. Once they're softened down to that level, you can either take them off the heat like I've done here, and we can reheat them later with some butter, or if you're going straight through to serve, just add the butter in at this stage until it melts. It will just coat the vegetables and give it a nice flavour. So we'll do those again in a minute. I'm just going to saute the potatoes now. So again, some cooking oil in the pan. You don't need to worry about olive oil because you'll add more flavours to the mix. I know not everyone has the luxury of multiple solid tops and gas rings at home, but while I'm doing that, I'll do the leeks. So as I say, as the leeks are already softened anyway, you don't need to be adding cooking, sorry, should I say, too much longer, depending on how you like them. Personally, I like them quite with a bite still. I think people tend to overcook vegetables quite a lot these days. So a couple of knobs of butter, just allow them to soften, and then just a little pinch of ground black pepper, and a pinch of cooking salt. Sea salt flakes, whatever you've got at home. With the salt, again, that's quite an important ingredient. Sea salt flakes give a much more natural flavour, whereas cooking salt tends to be removed from the lots of chemicals and things, so it adds a completely different flavour to the dish. But once the butter's softened, you see how they're glazed, just add a nice richness to the flavour. Again, you can just take that from the heat. Whilst there's still heat in the pan, these leeks will still continue to cook. So don't leave them on the heat too long and keep cooking them, because they're just going to wilt down to nothing. Okay, pan's got slightly hot, but you're looking for a medium kind of heat pan, so you don't end up burning them. When you place the potatoes in, place them away from you, so any fat that does splash up splashes away, not at you. And we're looking to get a nice golden brown colour on these. I think most people know how to do this at home anyway. I'll have one more in for good luck. Now if they start to stick, try not to worry too much, because they will stick until they start to cook on the bottom. Once they've got a layer of caramelised and cooked, then they'll be easier to lift off. If at that stage they still start to look brown around the outside and they're not quite free from the bottom of the pan, add some butter. As the butter foams, it will lift the potatoes off the bottom. That's a little trick for most things. So these are still sticking slightly to the bottom. That's not quite done, you've still got a bit of pale on there. So that's the kind of colour we want around the outside. So we'll cook it for a little bit longer. Like I was taught when I trained to become a chef years ago, you know, you are in control of the heat. You can turn it up and down how you see fit. Obviously, the hotter you're going to get it, the quicker you're going to have to be. It also means it's more likely to catch and burn. So there we have a nice kind of golden brown colour. We just want a little bit more over the rest of the potato, and then we can add the butter into the pan and a bit of salt. So once we've got that brown, by adding the butter as well, you're also going to add some colorisation to the potatoes. So if you give those a minute or two on the other side just to seal up. Again, these can be done in advance if you've got somewhere warm to keep these things. You know, the leeks, the chorizo, the potatoes can all be done. It's not like you've got to do everything all at the same time. Right, so that one's starting to still slightly now around the outside. So they've got a bit of a crust to them. So we'll add the butter. Again, if you dice the butter up small, it's going to melt a lot quicker. But by adding cold butter, it'll also mean that you'll cool the pan down quite quickly. So, foaming butter, touch of salt. This is unsalted butter. If we're using salted butter, you may or may not choose to add more depending on how you want to season your food. And then you can remove these from the pan. Again, if you haven't coloured them too far the other side, they could probably sit in the pan. Just be careful you don't take on too much grease. Okay, for the cherry tomatoes, we're going to look to blister these slightly underneath the grill. It's quite an easy process, really. Try and place them flat side down the best you can. So where the stalk would have been, place them that side down, and then literally drizzle with a little olive oil. Not too much, we don't want to deep fry them. We're just going to just sprinkle them with a little bit of salt. And what we're going to do is going to pop them underneath a hot grill until the stops start to blister. They should pop. It's okay to kind of get them like a charred colour, add a nice colour to the dish and add a nice bit of flavour, but literally that's as simple as that. All we're going to do is drop them underneath the grill. Depending on how hot your grill is, they'll be there for a couple of minutes. Okay, they will take around 3 to 4 minutes depending on how hot your grill is. But you're looking for kind of a blistered look on your cherry tomato, and just make sure they're warm. The longer you leave them up, you don't want to turn them into mush. This one's slightly more than the others. You just want that kind of blistered look. And again, just keep them warm. These can be done up in advance and reheated if you want to. Okay, quick lemon oil dressing to go with the scallop dish. If you find the right spoon here. Looking for about 1 teaspoon of white wine vinegar and about 4 tablespoons of olive oil. This stage, pinch of salt. If you've got the sea salt flakes like these, they taste 10 times better than the cooking salt. And then lemon juice. Now you can zest the lemon if you want to. Depends if you like that kind of texture. I haven't put it on this recipe because it's not to everyone's taste. But if you squeeze in around half a lemon, a little trick is to get more juice out of your lemon. If you roll it on the work surface first, a couple of times over, like you're rolling a rolling pin, you just loosen the juice up inside the fruit. And then that is all you're going to do. Give it a little whisk together until it starts to emulsify. And then you'll see that's all blended up together. Again, depending on how acidic you want the flavour, if you wanted to add the zest to it, you can. As with most things, always give them a quick try. Add a touch more salt to that. It's as simple as that. Same thing works with orange as well. You can do orange juice. Same kind of recipe depending on what it is you're doing. It's a simple dressing, goes well with any salads. It's very, very easy to do. Now we're going to cook the scallops, which is the last part of the meal before we plate. Take the chorizo off the heat. So the other half of the lemon is to add to the scallops when we get to the final stages. So again, touch of cooking oil. Two sides to the scallops. Can't see a great deal here. One side will have the ridges that look like a scallop shell, like a hand fan, and the other side should be more flat. To get a better presentation, always try and cook this side down. When it cooks, you should start to see the lines a little bit more, depending on how prominent they are being pressed against the shell. So that side down. Again, that's the base side, which again should be slightly smaller than the bigger side. Scallops don't take long to cook. Some people are often scared of undercooking scallops. You can eat them raw. People have them as ceviche or tartare, things like that. As long as they're clean and they're well sourced, there's no need to overcook them. I think people often have a fear of overcooking, well, most things, or undercooking most things, to be honest. So they cook far too many. So we're looking for a nice golden brown like this kind of colour here. Not quite there yet. Once these are done, literally we'll flip them over for about 10 seconds. Seal this side and add the butter and the lemon juice, and then immediately start cooling it down. Now if you want them cooked longer, turn the pan down slightly more and just cook them obviously for slightly longer, but the longer you cook them the tougher they get. You're looking for this kind of colour here, like a nice golden brown. Again, you're looking about 10 seconds or so on the bottom side of the scallop. And like I said before, whilst the scallops are in the pan, they're still cooking. That heat is still going through them. So once they're sealed, very briefly on the edge like that, add your butter. And take it off the heat or lift it off the heat, and you've got a gas ring electric. As soon as that butter melts, you're looking for a nice burn noisette. Have a squeeze of lemon juice. Be careful because it will splatter. And then at that point, just want to spoon some of that butter over the top, and then take them out of the pan. This really should be the last piece you do on this dish. The longer they stay in the pan, the longer they're going to keep cooking. Everything else can be done ready and kept warm. Spoon a little bit over the top, and again, depending on how you season you like your food, a touch of salt. And then to plate the dish, not everyone, depending on what plates you have at home. A few sauteed potatoes down the side, kind of crisscrossed, just to make it look appealing. With the leeks that have been warmed, lay them next to those. The chorizo, entirely up to you how you want to put this around the plate. You can put it in lines, you can dot it around, you can overlap it. Whenever you go out to eat, you'll find most chefs generally work in threes or odd numbers, never normally an even number. Because you haven't added any oil to the pan when you cook the chorizo, this is basically the rendered down fat. So all the nice fat and all the juicy flavours that were in the chorizo is what's left in the pan. You've not cooked this in olive oil or anything like that, so that's going to pack a punch in terms of the flavour. So you can drizzle some of that around the plate. Add your scallops, which can nestle quite nicely on the leeks. And then a few baby leaves just to finish the dish. And then last but not least, your lemon dressing, which if you drizzle over the leaves will kind of help dress your lettuce leaves as well. And just a touch around the edge of the plate. And that is your pan-seared scallops with sautéed potatoes, leeks, chorizo and lemon oil dressing.